This is the Leah Renee podcast, and we just had Thanksgiving. That's right, ya girl went out of state to get together with some family, and gotta say, didn't really like it. Not that much. It's okay. It's a wash, and I'm just trying to be honest with people because I think there are a lot of us that pretend that we're having a much better time than we are because we feel social pressure. But having read Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity, I'm trying to be more honest. I would say I broke even for the faff that it was to drive 6 hours, to see family, to leave the creature comforts of my own home to sleep at someone else's house, and then the long drive back in exchange for my kids having the opportunity to play with friends and family, have a nice meal, and the food was delicious, as always. Okay, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but one thing that I've been doing a lot with my visualizations is just letting my mind go to complete extremes. What is the coolest, craziest day that you can imagine? And really do this in great detail, right? Like, can you imagine the very best meal that you could eat? In fact, this is the whole basis of the podcast Off Menu with James Acaster and Ed Gamble. I've tried to think, what is the best meal that I've ever had in my life? I sat down at a restaurant and I ordered something, or I went to someone's house and there was a dinner party. What's the very best meal that I've ever had? And I can't say that I remember. But the only thing that comes to mind is Thanksgiving. I've had some nice Thanksgiving dinners. But Thanksgiving's kind of like a buffet. And maybe that's why it's hard for me to pick the perfectly crafted meal. I'm just curious. I wonder how many people know the best meal that they've ever had. It's pretty hard. Maybe the first fancy meal that I ever ate that I realized, oh, I'm eating with grown-ups. And that was a memorial service for a relative of mine that passed away. She did a bunch of humanitarian work in China. So there was this big dinner to honor her. And I got to go, I think I was 11 or 12. And I remember thinking, okay, Leah, this is it. You're with the grown-ups. Don't mess this up. Show them that you're mature. They brought out salmon and asparagus and some kind of white sauce on it. I think this was the first time I ever had salmon. If you know me personally or know my background or story, you know I was raised by a single dad and lived off a steady diet of the Burger King dollar menu and Taco Bell burritos to go. I had McDonald's memorized, but I never had salmon. I remember thinking, oh no, I don't like fish. That's okay, Leah, be a grown-up, eat this whole thing. And I actually liked it. I was like, what is this pink stuff? It's not bad, actually. That may have gone down in the record book as my best meal up to that point. But part of it was just because it was fancy. I don't even know if that salmon was actually cooked very well. It would be interesting to go back and eat that salmon meal now. At the time, it seemed so fancy and cool. Okay, so where was I going with my little tangent about food? Anyway, Thanksgiving, food is great, good conversations, it was fine. It's just kind of, when you get together for holidays, especially if there's people there that you don't know, it's small talk stuff. I like real talk. I like really getting at the meat of things. And we were the only ones at the dinner that weren't Mormon anymore. And it was very pep rally for the church kind of stuff. I don't know how to compare it. Maybe if you lived in a certain country and then you found out the government was corrupt and they were doing stuff that you didn't like, so you decided to move and get rid of your citizenship and repatriate somewhere else, and then you have a dinner with people who still live in that country and they're talking about how great it is and how much they like the government and the programs. Deep down, you're kind of thinking, yeah, but I left it. I'm glad that it works for you, but there are some really big doozies that government is putting out, and I really want to raise my hand and bring them up, but you love your country, so I will just shut my mouth. As someone who likes to blabber, I find it quite restrictive when I'm around believing Mormons because I just want to say all the things that I want to say. It's hard. I think the church does a lot of good, but there's also a lot of like batshit stuff that I'm like, yeah, it's not really true. I have empathy, though. In fact, one lady that I met at Thanksgiving dinner was interesting. They were visitors/guests of the family who was hosting the dinner. So I'd never met them before. And there was this sweet lady, and she brought up that it was difficult because she felt like there was contention at church when they would bring up certain topics. and how she didn't like that and it made her feel unsettled. And as somebody who has just left it, I'm like, yeah, there should be some difficult conversations about polygamy, which, by the way, was the lesson that they just recently had. I think last week or the week before that or something was the lesson on polygamy. I don't know if you know how Mormon curriculum works, but they basically have 4 years of curriculum that they cycle through. For a whole year, they study the Old Testament. Then the next year, they study the New Testament. Then the next year, the Book of Mormon. And then the next year, they study what's called the Doctrine and Covenants / church history. This year is church history, and it's where they cover Joseph Smith saying that God sent an angel that was going to kill him if he didn't restart polygamy like it was in days of yore. So obviously kind of a controversial topic. Sort of interesting about the church because they willingly walk into this. Every 4 years, they're going to have this conversation at church. But if we just stuck with the New Testament and all the Jesus-y teachings, it would be a lot easier. There's still a lot of Joseph Smith hero worship that goes on in the church. So, by the way, I apparently say worship wrong. I say worship, and I've been told, no, that's like a warship, like a toot, like, Apparently it's pronounced worship. Worship. Oh, I just say worship. Worship. I worship. It sounds so weird. Oh, man. Speaking of coffee, I just finished another cup, so I'm feeling... Okay. That's probably enough about Thanksgiving. Is it, though? Is it, or do you want to know the hot goss? No, I don't really do hot goss. I don't talk about my family very much because I respect their privacy, and I'm 98% sure that my family will never listen to this podcast, but out of respect for them, I won't bring up any details. I haven't even told you which family member's house I went to. That's how much restraint I'm showing on this podcast. Once you say it, you can't call it back. Because we were there for so many days, it's pretty hard to avoid. The whole church thing is kind of an elephant in the room. At one point, I decided to acknowledge that and just ask a couple of questions to try to melt some of the ice. It was a good conversation. To sum it up, it was my wondering if this family member was concerned about our salvation. I tried to explain to them that the reason that I left Mormonism was actually because the prophet of the Mormon church gave the injunction to, quote, hear him, to hear the voice of God. No intermediary, no Catholic saint, and for me, no Mormon prophet in between, no Book of Mormon, just straight to the source. I spent several months trying to suss out the God that I had been taught to worship, and to really drill down the characteristics of God. As I distilled God down into its purest parts, I used that as the measuring stick by which to evaluate Mormonism. So when I started to encounter unsavory things in the church's history, I would ask myself, is that God? Do I see God in that? And sometimes I did, but many times I didn't. I'm not going to go too deeply into all this stuff, and honestly, it's pretty common. Most people who leave the church have a lot of similar concerns. Concerns with church leaders of the past talking about race, about gender, LGBTQ. There's shady financial stuff the church has done and continues to do. Those are kind of the highlights because they're the most blaring logical fallacies. I explained to them that I used to think that humankind was like a bunch of people drowning in the ocean, and Jesus was like a life preserver thrown to you, and you clung to it, and that's how you didn't drown in a sea of doubt and despair and violence and chaos. But as I opened my mind to a more inclusive, bigger definition of who or what God could be, I realized that essentially we're all made of life preserver material. That if we stop flapping our arms and screaming, we find that we can float quite nicely. It's kind of like the phrase, I am not God. I am not God. It's the idea that we are made of divine stuff and we're going to be just fine. It's so hard because I really wanted this family member to know we are happier than we've ever been. I'll speak for myself. I'm happier than I have ever been. I'm so grateful and just bouncy and calm and accepting. I feel so good right now. And I explained that that's not what the church teaches. The church teaches that if you leave it, then you're like under Satan's power and you're living in denial. It's just weird to think that our family maybe kind of thinks we're possessed by the spirit of the devil. Like, kind of reminds me of this, there's like some kind of fungus that will take over an ant's brain and make it like a zombie, or maybe it's a spider. Anyways, that's what it kind of seems like when you leave the church, that it's like, oh, Satan has deceived them. And they're not really happy. They're just having fun, living it up, living a riotous life. And I'm like, no, my life is pretty much the same. No, it's not. No, I'm not that rowdy. I mean, if you're going to consider having 3 cups of coffee on Saturday with my friend, then whoa, buddy. No, sometimes I have alcohol, but not that often. Anyways, what? Why am I even bringing this up? This is what I'm saying. It's so crazy to have been in this religion because even a cup of coffee feels naughty. I am a grown-ass adult. And if somebody offers me a White Claw at a party, like, no big deal. It's not, it's like, okay. This is actually something that makes me wonder how it feels to be ex-Muslim. Like, has anybody seen a video? I don't know. Is it kind of dangerous to put up a video of it? But like someone that's left Islam and the first time they have bacon and they kind of always feel guilty when they have bacon. I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing if you were grown up in a really strict vegan household and then you decided to have dairy products or a steak or something. Yeah, it's all kind of the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we believe. I think the biggest difference for me is the stories that I tell myself and that I believe are just more fun. I'm not scared of stuff now. I really think everything's going to work out because it already is working out. It was actually really cool. We got to visit my friends who were from Syria. They're a family that we knew when we used to live in another city, and we went to visit. It was so wonderful to see them. We got to talk about Syria being granted sovereignty, and the new Syrian president is amazing. He's incredibly inclusive. He doesn't want to seek revenge or retaliation for any of the stuff that went on during the Assad regime. It was really, really cool to talk with them and great to hear their perspective. In fact, they got to go back and visit Syria this summer because they didn't want to visit when the war was still going on. But this is actually something that I think is hard for people to admit, but Trump actually sat down with leaders and said, what do you want? And he sort of assumed everybody was going to ask for money or some kind of deal. And he said, we would like our freedom. We would like to be a free country to run our own government. And he went, okay. So as much as I dislike Trump, I'm going to give him that. Also, the ceasefire in Gaza, like, I'd have to check on it today to see if Israel's up to more hijinks or Hamas or whatever, but it can be hard to admit that Trump has done anything good. But I'm very happy that food, medicine, supplies, etc. are getting into Gaza and that they can start rebuilding. Obviously, I'm scared because it's very fragile, but I'm also grateful that Syria is free. And it was so lovely to visit them and to catch up. And I think having friends like that is a good reminder for me to check my privilege. It's pretty easy to stay grateful when you hear about some of the stuff that they'd gone through and some of the struggles that their family members still have in Syria. Things like the electricity going on and off during the day and how hot it is and no air conditioning and having to get water and the challenges of rebuilding a city and grieving the loss of loved ones and all that kind of stuff. One thing that's quite sweet to me, I don't know if I've ever told this story on my podcast, but my friend, I'm going to call her Fatima. That's not her name, but I know that's a popular name over there, so I'm going to call her Fatima to protect her identity. Fatima and I were pregnant at the same time, and my baby was born 3 months before her baby was born. Sorry, that's not a flex. It's just how it happened. Sorry. My baby's older than your baby. I mentioned that because when her son, whom I'll call Muhammad, that's not his name, but again, I'm changing it. So when Muhammad was born, I came home from the hospital. I went to go visit them at their house. And when I showed up, she asked if I wanted to hold him. He was so cute, this brand new baby. And she said, yeah, the doctor says we need to go to the emergency room. And I said, what? And she said, no, it's okay. And I said, no, we really, emergency room is serious. We need to take him right now. And I said, do you want a ride? Because, she had other kids and her husband. And I think it was just a lot to pack up everything. So we got in my car, drove to the emergency room. And what an eye-opening experience that was. Her doctor told the ER she was coming, and we still had to wait in the lobby for like an hour with a baby that's critically ill. Basically, her milk hadn't come in, so he was starving. She would try to nurse him, but there was no milk coming out. Eventually, we got past the front desk, and they put us in a little exam room, and I, at the time, was nursing my baby. So I told Fatima, I don't know if this is weird, but I'm willing to nurse your baby if you're comfortable with that. And I said, I don't have any diseases. I've never done drugs. My husband's never done drugs. Like, my blood is clean, like I don't, sounds weird, but it's like blood privilege. I wasn't sure if that was like inappropriate, but I'm seeing this starving baby and I have exactly what he needs. So as soon as I offer it, she just starts shaking her head. And so it's like, all right. So I hooked him up and like, go, 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 go. He just went to town and I was pumping milk on the other side. Anyway, I didn't know that within her culture, and I don't know if this is Syria or this is like all of Islam or their particular like branch of Islam, but they're Sunni. So I guess I could look it up. Basically, as soon as I nursed Muhammad, he and my daughter became siblings. So I'm like his stepmom now. And Muhammad and my daughter can never marry because they're considered related. It's very cute and very fun. And my youngest, his sister, is very excited because I have all girls and he's a little boy. And we explained this story to her recently. And she was like, I have a brother? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, kind of. And she's like, I can't believe it. It was adorable. Anyways, we got these two together. It kind of felt weird for them, like almost like an arranged marriage or something. It's like, no, you don't have to get married. But it was kind of like, that's your brother. That's your sister. Anyways, they were both very shy, but they were both cute. And we found out that Muhammad at school, they were making little turkey, like headband things, which let's not get into cultural appropriation stuff. Okay, who cares? It was fun. He had these paper feathers that he wrote sisters, brothers, mom, dad, things he was thankful for. And he wrote my daughter's name on it, or he put stepsister, which is like so cute. And then we thought that was such a cute story. And when we got home, my daughter showed me a piece of paper that they did a similar craft of things they were thankful for. And she put Muhammad on there. Oh, it's so cute. Anyways, so anybody looking to kind of low-key adopt a baby, there's a loophole. You just got to have some breast milk. No, I have tried so hard to figure out how to make that work as a joke on stage. But it's just kind of a weird story. It's a fun, I love that story. In fact, it's kind of frustrating when you're a lactating woman and you go to the store or something and there's a screaming baby because you're like, give me that baby. I know how to make that stop. You have this magic power, these mammary cannons with you at all times that can solve world hunger and quiet a child. It's incredible. Nursing is amazing. I'm really surprised with all the health fetishes and things that people do to their bodies. I'm so surprised that more women don't lactate because then your boobs are like nice and full. And then you make milk. And if we could get a good market going to sell it, I just think breastfeeding is the way. Seriously, milk boobs, way better looking than silicone boobs. I'm just saying. As someone who has been there, maybe not so cute when you stop nursing, but when you are nursing, hashtag Pamela Anderson Lee. I can't believe that I got into boobs. I make a rough outline of stuff that I'm thinking about that I want to just kind of ramble chat, but giant Gonzagas was not on the list that I thought that I would cover today. But maybe in the same vein, or milk duct, if you will, of gratitude, it's funny because we say comparison is the thief of joy, but not if you compare to how bad things could be. Does that make sense? Is it often we're looking at people who are farther along than we are or have more money and we're like, oh man, I want that, and then we feel sad with what we have. But look at where you came from. In fact, that's one of the things they say for vision boards, is to include something that you already got, something that you longed for or worked for, and then it came to fruition. This time of the year always reminds me of the 6 months that we were in the UK because I longed for that so much. I was so eager to do world schooling, which is essentially homeschooling, but you travel along with it. You live nomadically, usually anywhere from a few weeks to a few years, in an effort to teach your kids about the great wide world and the way things work. The idea is, rather than learning about it in a textbook, What if we actually went to Greece or to Philadelphia or to Spain or to China? It's honestly pretty great. I thought when we left for our world schooling trip that we would be gone for a few years. But after 6 months, my family petered out. They were like, we're done. Maybe it's the fact that we started in the UK, and we were there from September to February. So, all the most charming months the UK has to offer. Sorry, UK, I'm not trying to throw shade, but it is pretty gray and bleak and drizzly. The fun thing is, now each November, December, January, I remember when we celebrated things over there. I even put together a real American Thanksgiving for my English friends, and that was fun. I really felt like a grown-up in that moment because I coordinated that whole meal and I made all the stuff, and it was good. I really was proud of that. So when fall rolls around, it's fun to remember what it was like to celebrate Christmas over there. And honestly, it was a bit pants because it was still a little bit of COVID. It wasn't full-blown COVID time. It was Omicron. So they didn't have all the restrictions. We actually did get COVID while we were there. So I guess if you're going to get COVID, get the fancy British variety with its little monocle and top hat. That's what I say. All of that big tangent was to say that was something that I used to visualize of how much fun we would have going over to Europe, living in different places. And you know what? We got to do it. So I have pictures on my vision board of that unconventional thing that I wanted to do, and then it happened. And that's helpful because I like having it there to remind me, because honestly, when you start getting into Joe Dispenza, Byron Katie kind of stuff, it gets a little bit lonely because you don't always feel free to say what you're thinking. I'll give you an example. I have a group of friends that have our own little chat, like a WhatsApp chat, and I really love them, and I feel like I can share anything. But over time, I started to change to the point where if I really said what I was thinking, I would kind of bring down the vibe, not in a negative way, but maybe in a, I don't know. I think I sort of sound toxically positive. It gets lonely as you move along because if I were to really say the things that I was thinking, I'd probably come off as very obnoxious. Even at Thanksgiving, I was just very quiet. I think I'm a better listener right now. Part of that is because if I really did say the thing that I wanted to say, I think I just sound kind of sort of Pollyanna. It's much more than Pollyanna positive thinking. I think it's sort of a soul-rooted knowledge that everything's fine, that we're all being taken care of, and you're free to create anything that you want in your imagination. And as you persist and live in the law of assumption, then things that you imagined become material. Does that make sense? See, even as I say that, is that kind of weird? But that's what I'm saying about the vision board. At some point years ago, I imagined what it would be like to take my family to England. I persisted in the belief, and then eventually it materialized. So from the outside, it sounds like, well, that's just goal setting. And to an extent it is, if you do it from the Newtonian model, the cause and effect model. If your goal is to take your family to England for Christmas, then you can save up money, you can get passports, you can book a ticket, and then boom, you've done it. That's not miraculous. The difference is sometimes the things that we imagine are so fanciful or feel so far off that our logical mind can shoot it down to go, oh, come on, da-da-da-da-da. But if you believe in synchronicities or lucky breaks or pie in the sky kind of stuff, if you allow yourself to sink into that and to imagine it being true, you basically create it in another dimension. You've created it with your mind, and it exists somewhere out there in the ether. The fact that you've taken the first step to even visualize it means that one day it can become material reality, if that makes sense. Man, I know this stuff sounds really woo-woo. I'm sorry. But that's what I'm saying. I just have less people that I can talk to about this. I've thought about making like a woo-woo group or something. But this is what's weird is like I feel open to a lot of stuff. But if I make like a woo-woo group that just meets at our local coffee shop, I'm like, am I going to get some crystal ladies up in there? Some astrology-obsessed millennials? I don't know. I don't know what I would get. That's why online communities are so easy and accessible to find, because you can find a very niche kind of crowd. Maybe the easiest way to describe it is that a lot of obsessive people will obsess about what's the worst that could happen. Most of us understand that worst case scenario thinking, horror stories, disaster situations, that people are fueled by fear and they're in a constant state of fear, panic, lack, anxiety. What I'm proposing is being obsessed with what could go right. If you could think about anything, if your mind is a fantasy spinning machine, why wouldn't you spin a fantasy that's fantastic? Well, then I'll be disappointed if it doesn't happen. Well, you're going to be disappointed anyway. If you can't even visualize it, it's probably never going to happen. I'm telling you, it's bonkers and it's amazing. Maybe I'll put a link to the woo-woo music that sometimes I'll listen to visualize. But it's so fun to just sit back in a chair and let your mind just go. In fact, this is what I was telling my friend when I went out to coffee. I told her about some of the things that I had visualized. She was like, how often do you do this? I'm like, whenever I want. If I'm like walking to the store, I can just imagine having lunch with David Sedaris and what kind of conversations we would have. You can do it any time you want. In fact, I'm curious to watch The Secret Life of Walter Mitty because as I remember reading it as a kid, and then there was a movie that came out, I was like, yeah, this guy... Okay, here's the question. Do you think it's bad to daydream? Is daydreaming bad or good? If you think daydreaming is bad, you're going to have a hard time with law of assumption, law of attraction, that kind of stuff. If you think daydreaming is good, then why not get good at it? It is so fun. And what's crazy is your body doesn't know the difference. Y'all, not to be crass, but that's why pornography works, right? Somebody's just seeing images or they're imagining something and their body physiologically responds to that. I'm saying if you can imagine yourself going to the Swiss Alps, checking into a ski lodge, renting a pair of skis, going down a Black Diamond Mountain, if you can visualize that, your body goes through all the same stuff that it would if you were actually there. And, like many people have said, the fantasy's better than the reality. It's amazing. You can go on a ski weekend and the lift ticket isn't going to cost twice as much as you thought it would. It's not going to be surprisingly a lot colder than you thought, so you didn't have the proper equipment. All of that is taken care of when you're the director of the shot. I'm telling you, it's so fun. In fact, sometimes I will bake conflict into my little mind movies just to make it more realistic. So maybe in this skiing scenario, maybe I don't have a proper hat and I am cold. So I go to the ski shop and I go in there and I hand them my card and maybe I buy a $150 merino wool triple walled hat that's gorgeous and warm. But you know what? It's my dream. And that's chump change for a rich gal like me. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, I've always been an imaginative kid. So maybe this is way harder for people than I think it is. Maybe it is much more difficult than I'm making it out to be. But if you are somebody who's ever had a panic attack, you will be amazing at this. If you can imagine in vivid detail all the stuff that can go wrong, then you can imagine all the stuff that can go right. And I'm saying it's so fun. And I'm glad that I'm saying it because a lot of people, okay. Here, this is something I want to get off my chest. I really like stories of people manifesting stuff. I saw one about this girl who wanted a guitar. She had a guitar, but it was kind of a cheap one. She's a teenager. She plays the harp, but she also plays the guitar. And you know what? She wanted a nicer guitar. So she would visualize her playing a Martin guitar. She knew those were good. She would see her hands on the fretboard. She would see herself plucking the strings. And she just put it out there. She didn't obsess about it. It was like, oh, I'm going to have a Martin guitar and whatever. Sent it out there. Didn't really think about it. Then at some point, she was playing her harp at a gig and an audience member came up and said, oh, so you play the harp? And she said, yeah, well, I play the guitar too. She said, really? And to make a long story short, this audience member gifted this teenage girl her deceased husband's custom Martin guitar. Now, she's a teenage girl, she's smaller, and this particular guitar was crafted to be just a little bit smaller. And she got it completely free. I love stories like that. I love these synchronicity, bolt from the blue, things just showing up on your doorstep. I love stories like that. So I kept looking for them. So far, the podcasts that I found about manifesting are so frustrating because the people who are making them are like life coachy people that have some kind of course to take or a coaching program or a one-on-one or a mastermind. So then the people that they interview for their podcast about synchronicities are people that are like, I grew my business from one client making $300 a month to making $150,000 a month from clients all over the world. I'm like, no, what's just like a normal person? I don't want to be a life coach. I don't want to have some course. I don't want to be some kind of wanky life coach, which, you know what? Where attention goes, energy flows. You're actually not supposed to hate things because then you get more of it. So I'm going to be neutral. I'm going to be neutral on it, okay? Because I don't have to eat my words. I'm just going to say I love making people laugh, and I love putting this kind of stuff in plain language because I think the way a lot of people present it, it's too woo-woo, it's too weird. There's coded language and kind of this boss babe scripty font on Instagram, or the masculine version is kind of like how to 10x your business with this one mind hack, how you can manifest wealth coming out of your... Never mind. You see what I'm saying? It's so many of them are like, someday. It's too gauche, or like, hey guys, this is Madison here. Just a reminder, you have 2 weeks left to sign up for my Girl You Got This course. We're going to cover all of our bases this time. We are going to talk about how to totally dominate your social media in a way that builds fans, clients, and true disciples of your brand. I'm just not into that. I can't stand it. That's why I love stand-up comedy. But then stand-up comedy is too hack and not earnest enough for me. So I'm saying it's so hard for me to find my inspired direction because I don't know what the heck I'm making. The life coach thing seems weird to me. The being just a stand-up comedian seems weird to me. I don't know what I'm doing, okay? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try to, I'm putting this out in the universe, okay? Because this is something I've been visualizing on my own, but I'm going to send it out into the ether like the girl did with her guitar. I really want to go to my friend's wedding in July, and I have the money and the means to do it, but my husband is not on board. If I go to my friend's wedding in England in July and then Fringe starts in August, that means I either go out to England just for the wedding and then come right back, and then turn around 2 weeks later and go back to Scotland and then be there for a month. Or leave in July for this wedding and then I stay out there. But then that means I'm in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, wherever for 2 months, which is a pretty significant chunk. I don't know what I'm manifesting other than I've got to go to this wedding, y'all. Is that scarcity? I don't even know the last time I went to a wedding. It has been on my bucket list to go to an English wedding basically my whole life. This is the first invite I've ever received to go to an English wedding. Number one, people aren't really getting married anymore. Number two, it's expensive to have a wedding, so you only get invited if you're super tight. Number three, I don't live over there, so it's hard for me to develop super tight relationships. Number four, these ladies were amazing. I loved them so much. They came to my show. They were instant BFFs. I knew these people in the fourth dimension before I met them, before they materialized in my life. I have to go to this wedding. So whether that means that my husband becomes surprisingly chill about it, or I win the lottery and just have a chunk of change that he can't deny that I should be able to spend on this wedding, or something completely out of the blue puts me in England at that time. I am just putting this out into the universe because it's happening. Okay, it is happening. And I will say this whole manifest your whole manifest destiny. Just kidding. We need to rebrand manifest destiny. It is not a bad phrase, but it is a bad colonial idea that I do not stand with. I'm just going to say creating stuff in the fourth dimension and then letting it appear in material life. There's an extra layer when you are in partnership with another person, because I gotta say the hubs is not a magical thinking woo-woo guy. I'm defo totes the free spirit in the relationship, which, you know, yin yang, it's all good. But sometimes I'm like, oh man, be quiet with your limiting beliefs. Shh. The universe is listening. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm such a nut job. But you know what? I don't even care. I don't even care anymore because I'm so freaking happy. Whatever. Eat my dust, haters. Do you even know how good I'm going to look at this wedding? No, you don't, and I don't either. because the body that I have imagined in the fourth dimension has not arrived in material reality, but it will. Okay, I'm becoming obnoxious even to myself, which means I think we're done here. One day I will make a proper intro and outro for this podcast, but right now it's just me having fun in my closet, truly, which I kind of think is sweet. Did you know that that's how Martin Short got started? When he was a little kid, he would go up to his attic and listen to records and have his own talk show by himself with his stuffed animals. So in honor of the great Martin Short, I am sitting in an attic, not surrounded by stuffed animals, but by clothes that I have dyed fluorescent yellow. Because that's my color. I love that color. It's sexy and safe. I don't get hit by cars. And to be honest, I don't really get hit on. So maybe it's not that sexy. Or as I like to say, it's from the Ann Taylor Rave collection. My theory with neon yellow is if the universe is going to send me something, like a free plane ticket to my friend's wedding, I want to be sure that whoever the person is who's going to be delivering this synchronicity can find me. I'm serious. I wear this color to be a target. I can't be missed. And I can escort children through the crosswalk more safely. I know I look like a lollipop lady, and only if you're from the UK you're going to know what that is. That's enough about my normalized neon rant. I want to normalize imagination, normalize daydreaming. Let's stop using our brains to think of disasters and think of delights. That is my cri de coeur this very cold, rainy December morning from my closet. From a 200-year-old row home in Philadelphia, I'm wishing you well. And I wish you wishes. Wish for stuff. Do it. Do it in detail. The Santa Claus universe will deliver it. And you know what? It will take longer than you think it will, and that's okay. Because when it comes, mwah. Thank you, Internet, for delivering this weird monologue to whomever finds it. Bye!